4 to 5 years, and it creates flooding concerns. So this was the issue that we were brought in to address. And again, the impact was the flooding. So many homes surround these areas, and that's the reason why these retention areas were built in the first place, is to help alleviate flooding from homes. So the water was intended to move through them, but with the overgrowth of vegetation, that was being impeded. So what did we do? We call it the big fix. 4 big project areas were identified, and you can see on this map it's a little bit small, but the 4 areas, we started right in the middle with Deer Lake, then we moved south down to Deer Point, then we went up to Bighorn and Deer Crossing, and then the most recent project was over in Elk Court, and I'll be diving into those projects each separately a little later in the presentation. So those were the 4 areas that were identified. And we created channels in these retention areas, almost 6,000 linear feet of channels to open up the flow and allow that water to move through unimpeded. We also performed minor jetting of some of the inflows and outflows to remove sediment buildup. As you can imagine, as water flows through these systems, it carries with it sediment, mud, runoff from the streets, and so every so often they need to be cleaned out. And then finally, we did install some stone riprap in some of the areas, so placing the stone around the inflow and outflow structures to prevent growth of particularly woody vegetation around those structures and allow, again, those pipes to function properly. So I want to talk just very briefly about why ILM was a good partner and why we were uniquely qualified to be the company to come in and perform this work. We have a pretty large fleet of amphibious equipment. It has very low ground pressure, and it all has tracks on it. We have an amphibious excavator, that's the machine on the left. And then we have 2 specialized pieces of equipment on the right. The one that's kind of on the lower side is a marsh buggy. It's basically a transport vehicle, and then an amphibious sled. That sled can hold any vegetation or sediment that's removed from areas, and then it has a hydraulic lift to help dump it off into areas for disposal. These pieces of equipment are very unique to be the best type of equipment in wetland and marshy, mucky areas. We actually work with a company down in Georgia who builds them for us. And just to give you a sense of how light they are, the ground pressure of that excavator on the left is 1, so it's 1 pound per square inch. The average PSI, or per square inch pound, for a human is about 16. So it's a very, very light piece of equipment and can kind of track in and out without any notice of its presence. So that's why we were kind of the company that was most qualified to partner here. And those are the pieces of equipment that we used. So how did we do it? So first of all, as you can imagine, as I mentioned, those cattails and phragmites can grow up to 12 feet tall, so we had to mow down all that vegetation. We needed to create sight lines, and we needed to create those paths from the inflows and the outflows of each of these retention areas so we could figure out what needed to be done. Then the next one was to excavate the excess material. So we used that amphibious excavator, and we dug out all the root mass of that vegetation that was present. It was then loaded onto that sled that I showed in the photo and hauled off for disposal. And during this whole process of excavation, we worked very closely with your village engineer to ensure that the proper grading of these areas was maintained. So we want to make sure that we've got a little bit of a pitch and that we're reaching that appropriate slope so those any water that's coming in through the inflow appropriately carries down through the outflows. And then the actual haul off and disposal. Again, it was placed onto the sled and hauled out of the wetland area. Then we load it into semi-trailers for disposal off-site at an organic dump site. The interesting thing about projects like this is that trucking and disposal is what makes up usually about 50% of the cost of the projects. So it's not the actual work that we're doing in the wetland, it's getting that material out of the wetland and to an appropriate location that's approved by all the appropriate agencies as well for disposal. And then the last piece of this is the ongoing maintenance. So we did all this great work, but then there's a maintenance piece that is required, and the lack of maintenance is why this work was required in the first place. So what we're doing right now for maintenance with these projects that I'll get to on the next slide is 2 visits per year, and we just run through those channels and make sure any loose vegetation is raked up and removed. And we also, during our late summer visit, we treat the cattails and phragmites on the sides of the channel. You can see on the photo here, on the left-hand side of that channel, some of that vegetation is browned out. We want to continue to treat that so it dies off and it doesn't grow back into the channels, but that it stays where it belongs and those channels can move freely. Okay, so let's run through the projects. Year 1, that was 2018. We did 2 different projects. The first one was Deer Lake Drive up on the top, and then the second one was Deer Point Drive further south. So the maiden voyage was Deer Lake Drive. It was about 3,000 linear feet of channels that we opened up. And then Deer Point Drive was about 1,000 linear feet. So a lot of learnings with these first 2 projects, and I think we really kind of figured out exactly how the machines work through these particular retention areas, the unique nuances of the stormwater conveyance system that you have here in Hainesville, and then the result of how that water would flow once we opened it up.
To throw in one piece of side information that I've just been made aware of today, this is Antler Pond, and it drains out into Grays Lake, into their neighborhood ponds. Grays Lake is now trying to get a grant from the state to open up their pond system to get the drain right. So since ours is draining properly, now they have to do some work to make theirs drain properly.
Could you point to exactly where Debbie's talking about? Because I'm not sure, is it that whole thing, all of that?
The yellow
lines are the channels that they go.
Right, so all of the top one, all of that is the Deer Lake?
Oh,
right.
The white line kind of divides the 2. Yeah, so Deer Lake is up there.
This is the front end of the neighborhood.
Oh, I wasn't sure if it was just one channel or if the whole, all the branches were.
Yeah, all the yellow is where channels were done.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, so as you can see, quite a few little yellow lines in there. We had to make sure everything connected properly. And Grays Lake has called us for assistance with that project, so thank you very much.
We'll take this.
Yeah. my baby needs to go to college. So. And then year 2, 2019, so we focused on this area along Bighorn Drive and Deer Crossing Court, about 800 linear feet of channels. And this area has a little bit of a unique challenge because to the left of that main artery, that main channel, is a large berm.
Right through here.
Yep. And then to the left of that is a huge retention pond, which I'll talk about at the end of the presentation as a possible future project. But so this one had some unique challenges in trying to figure out exactly what was causing the blockage and how to get that water moving appropriately. And we definitely made progress.
And one of the things they found on this project, this opening, this opening, this opening, water comes from over here and flows this way. This is on the east side of Deer Crossing. So it flows down here, water that's caught in the basins that are back here will come over this way. This, and this were all, those particular outlets were all about, what, Mike, 90% blocked. So we had to pay, we got another company, National Power, they had to clear it out because everything was backing up and flooding these backyards. It's been fixed.
Yeah, so you can again see another example of why maintenance of these stormwater conveyances is so important.
Could you just go back to the Deer Point thing? Is that dealing with?
Microphone, please.
Is this working?
Yeah.
Okay. Is this dealing with the mud pit that used to be a retention pond, that when you change the drainage to go under 120, that it...
Dealing with the mud pit in what sense?
There was a big pond that was...
That was this.
Yes.
That used to have water almost all the way up.
Yes. And then all the water drained because of the...
Where it goes under and then
yes,
across.
went
Okay.
across to 120.
Yes.
So it was just sitting there as a mud pit. Because, so now by having those channels,
It won't get as deep, it won't progress as far, as close to 120 as it used to. The water will flow as designed to this outlet, and then over and under 120. So we should, unless it's some godforsaken storm, we should never have water up here again. In fact, Mike has been able to cut back and expose more greenery away from 120. Now, will it get damp? Will it get as deep as it was? No.
so it may or may not have water in it depending on what's going on in nature.
Yeah, these, all of these areas are technically what we call retention ponds, and by nature, they're designed to always retain water, a little bit of water, not as much water as they have been retaining, as opposed to a detention pond, which is designed to drain out. So, and the reason why you see that vegetation, those cattails and phragmites, that really tall vegetation, they really like wet feet. They like their root systems to be really, as you're very aware, Georgia. So that's why that vegetation grows there, because there's always a little bit of water.
Thank you.
Does that help? Sure. Okay, and I think we covered this one, so let's move on to year 3. So this was just in 2020. We moved up to Elk Court. This was a unique project because all of these projects had very unique challenges, but this one had a lot of woody overgrowth, so a lot of trees and shrubs that were blocking access to even be able to get in and understand what was happening in this retention area, so it required a lot of removal of that material before we could even get in and clear the channels. And I should also mention that each of these projects, I think we started with a plan in mind, but once we got in and were able to understand what was happening, things were modified along the way. Again, access in these areas is so difficult until we could get our machines in. We couldn't really finalize scope and plans. Any questions on these 3 projects? Okay. So then the results, positive results. The channels are all flowing as we would expect. The flooding concerns have been alleviated. And the really great thing is every time our crew is out doing work in these areas, we get really positive feedback from the homeowners. So the residents in your village are noticing that work is taking place, and they are grateful to have these issues be addressed that I think have been going on for some time prior to Mayor Daley instituting this long-term plan.
And we have followed up with maintenance every following year. So Deer Point, Hamlet Pond, those have been in the maintenance cycle twice now.
2 years.
Deer Crossing once, and we've contracted to continue the maintenance.
Yep. So speaking of maintenance, thank you for the segue. So yeah, so as Mayor Daley mentioned, we've been doing ongoing maintenance for these projects, and if you've been kind of noting the cost of the projects as we've been scooting along, you can see that the cost of the project versus the cost of maintenance is so very small. And it's just, it really is a required step in order to maintain the longevity of the work that's being done. So we've been doing what I will call right now immediate or short-term maintenance. What we're recommending is kind of evolving that to a longer-term maintenance program. Now that we have a bulk of the work completed, we've been doing maintenance for a couple of cycles. What we'd like to recommend is we go to every other year instead of every year. These areas are now kind of leveling out and accepting the environment that has been created for them, and they're behaving the way that we want them to, so we don't need to go out every year. So we'll probably see that evolve. That's a recommendation that we made to the mayor. Okay, so what's on the docket? So what we're recommending for 2021 is a new project for Elk Court Basin, and I'm going to actually just flip forward.
Can we just, before you go on to something new, I don't mean to.
Sure, no.
When you're taking out the cattails and the phragmites, would it be possible, I mean, are you taking them out so that the roots are dead? Could you replace that seeding other native grasses or reeds or something so that eventually with a bit of luck, the phragmites and their cattails would be outnumbered by the other native grasses?
Absolutely, that's a great question. So what we like to do with projects like these, because initially these areas likely were native they probably had native species. So we typically like to give the areas 2 to 3 years to see if there's a native seed bank that does come up, because disturbing the areas, it would take a little bit for those native seed banks to take hold, but it is likely that they are underneath those root masses that we're removing. So we should hopefully in those first 2 areas be able to see this growing season whether any of that native vegetation is present, and if those seed banks are there, that's great. Otherwise, absolutely adding native seed could be an option as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. But that's ideally what we would want, is the good native plants.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so again, I'm going to flip through to the map on this. So this is the area we're talking about. So Hainesville Road is down the left-hand side of the slide, and then the ballpark is on the south. So the channeling that we're recommending for this coming year is in that blue and yellow line going east to west to open that area up. It's approximately 3,500 linear feet, so again, it's one of the bigger projects. And this one does have significant access issues because of woody overgrowth. There's a lot of trees and shrubs and bushes that need to be cleared out before we can even get in to access those areas.
And that area takes the overflow from Cranberry Lake. And right now it just runs through a wooded mess.
Yes, yes, that's a perfect explanation.
How's the culvert underneath the road? Is it open and stuff like that, or is it climbed up?
Mike, do you know?
We have good flow coming from the west side to the east side.
Okay, so it's pretty well open and everything else.
I have a question. Isn't the opening where the, like the bridge and the bike path and stuff is, isn't that where the connection is between Cranberry Lake and
There's
the beginning of,
Michael, tell us.
Are you asking about the pipe that goes under Hainesville Road?
yeah, I thought that it was near where the bridge is, near the bike path.
It is right next to the path, just a little bit south of the open area during the summertime. Right before you get to the townhouses, there's that open area that we usually cut through. And it's just to the south of that, about 15 yards. And that goes right under Hainesville Road. Next time you walk out there, you'll see the pipe, and it's got a bunch of
I'll
riprap
bring it
around
here.
it.
Here's the pond that's with the townhomes. Tell me where to point.
Probably a little bit south of there.
Yeah.
That's our access. Those bushes further south, right about there. If you come in there and then go south, the pipe is right there.
Oh, so it,
Probably right where your finger's at. Maybe a little bit further south than that.
Okay. And it flows over there.
Yes.
this is the area where the people were complaining that when we cleared it out, then
Yeah.
of the buckthorn, then they didn't have screening for their property, right?
Correct.
Okay, got it.
George?
Yeah, actually, you mentioned something I was going to follow up on. You said that there's a lot of overgrowth there, so in order to get to the area that you're going to work on, you have to clear a lot of stuff out. Is there any,
Go ahead.
is there any plan to make sure that you don't just cut everything down, because there are probably some good trees and shrubs in there as well?
Yeah.
Coming through here, this is the driveway around Avon.
Right.
Park. This is the access point, and then they'll work from there. And the idea would be like in the other ones, to clear it as wide as the natural stream that exists, to take the wood out of the stream and widen enough that the machinery can get through.
Where you had that orange thing, whatever that is,
That's going to be the path.
does that exist now, or is that what we're going to use?
That would
Clear out.
be vegetation that we would clear in order to get to the retention area that we need to get to.
And that's the same spot. This whole area is where Dave and our crew worked last year. Oh, gosh. 30 days to clean out dead stuff back here. So are we possibly going to take down our Price Island, possibly going to take down some nice trees to get the machines in?
That would have to be staff, all of our staff, the great thing about our company is we're not just a construction company, we're an ecological company. So all of our gentlemen who are driving these machines are also ecologists. So they're not just going in with a machine and mowing everything down. Alex in particular, who's worked very closely with the mayor and with Mike, he is one of the top ecologists in our company. So very mindful approach to making sure we would love for these areas to be 100% native plants and keep all of that good vegetation. We just want to get rid of the invasive vegetation that will continue to cause problems for you.
That area could be very
that mic on?
visual to, you know, people using the bike path if we could ever get it.
Absolutely.
Let's focus on what they're gonna do, right, because we got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about.
Okay, so that's what we're recommending for 2021. And then with the last slide, I'm going to go on to a possible future project, what we're calling a wetland restoration project. This would be a multi-year plan, and this kind of goes to what you're both speaking to in terms of, you know, really getting more to native areas and really restoring some of these areas. So I'm going to flip over to the map. So as I mentioned when I was talking about the Bighorn Deer Crossing project, that wetland area right in the middle, you can kind of see it kind of looks like a little donut with the darker green in the middle and the lighter green on the outside. That is a large retention basin that is currently very overgrown. The capacity is diminished. Ideally, that also needs to be addressed. It could cause future flooding concerns. Again, as in Lake County, we are continuing to see these rain events. They're not going away anytime soon. They're going to continue. So need to be mindful and proactive on your future projects. So what this long-term restoration project would look like is we envision it as perhaps a 3-year approach with year 4 moving into maintenance and starting to clear out some of that invasive woody vegetation that is creating issues in that large retention basin that we just saw and blocking the capacity and the flow for water to move through there. It could be a $20,000 to $40,000 annual budget investment. It could be less than that. It could be more than that. We can really be flexible with how this project looks. Again, it's one of those things where we kind of have to get in to see what we're dealing with, and then we can finalize scope and make exact recommendations on areas.
Are you aware of anything that a grant from Stormwater
I was just going to say, the great thing about a project like this is that it's ideal for grant funding. So that would definitely be something we would look into on your behalf and see what we could secure. So, yep.
Could you go back to that map?
Yep, here you go.
All right. Now, how is that, where is that in relation to the other project that you just talked about?
The other project is here,
Oh, okay.
coming over to there.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, and that is all I have.
Any questions for Debbie? Now, we have budgeted, which we haven't approved yet, but we have budgeted for that Hainesville Road to Elkhart project in this year, in this upcoming budget. So if all goes well, come spring, they'll be back. All right?
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Yeah. You get to go home and see your baby.
Great. Well, if any questions do come up, be sure and let the mayor know, and he knows how to get a hold of me. So, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have a card, Debbie?
Yeah, that would be great. Yep, absolutely. No problem at all.
Take care.
You too.
Public comments. Our one public has nothing to say tonight. Need a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
John and Wally. Roll call, please.
Trustees George Duberstein,
Aye.
Kreese,
Aye.
Koval, Dernoski,
Aye.
Georgianne Duberstein, and Chanel.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Reports. Finance, John.
All right, so you should all have in your packet, and I hope you reviewed our third draft of budget requests and made additional cuts so that we could have a balanced budget this year. And I'd like to thank Kelly for meeting with me and Mary for meeting with me on Tuesday. It was just a week ago? To go over the last round of cuts and make those adjustments.
Okay, thank you, John. Public Works, Wally.
Basically, talked to Mike a couple of times through the snow event, but he was pretty busy, so we didn't meet. Other days were coming up. Talked to the mayor a lot about the well and updates and stuff like that. And, you know, some of our ideas were and stuff like that, but that's about it. But Mike is going to, since he's here, might as well let him read his report.
Thank you, Mr. Priest. Over the last 4 weeks, we received about 35 inches of snow, and we've spent the majority of our time on snow removal and snow relocation. With the amount of snow, we had to haul the snow from the Hainesville path, intersections, and cul-de-sacs to the public works parking lot, the front lot in front of the parking lot. The reasoning for this operation is in the event we receive more snow, we simply don't have any place to put it. We also started digging out around our fire hydrants, and we finished that up today. That is all I have.
To tie into the snow that we've been able to enjoy, I have probably gotten a dozen calls from residents, some complimentary, some complaining. Just to give you an example of some, one individual called, it's on the senior list, and we cleared the end of their driveway. And this individual asked that when we cleared the end of the driveway, could we not dump it in his easement, but take it across the street and dump it into his neighbor's yard? Because his neighbor's pile isn't as big as his. We have our snowplowing crew, which is basically Dave and his crew, and Mike and Max in some instances. We've knocked out a few mailboxes, but when you drive a plow down the street and start throwing snow, it hits it, knocks it down. What we do then is we have 5-gallon buckets with posts in the concrete and a mailbox on top. We give it to them, and come springtime, we replace the broken mailbox. We've had difficulty with people moving their cars, and we've dealt with that either through me communicating with the individuals or the police encouraging them to do that. Overall, Dave and his crew and Mike and his crew have put in a lot of hours to keep our streets very, very clean. When I've asked Kathy and Kelly, who don't live in the village, how do our streets compare to Grays Lake streets and Lake Villa, which like Kelly's unincorporated, but compared to Grays Lake streets, we're a lot better. So I'm proud of our crew. Some of the complaints are inevitable, some of them aren't, because people just don't understand the mechanics of snow plowing. Typically, I would say out of those 20 or 25, 17 or 18 of them, after I got off the phone with them, understood and were no longer complaining. And I do make a point of, if they call, I'll leave a message and complain, I respond. All right, any questions for Mike or Wally? Community events.
I did get a call from the chief of the Union Forces, and he said he had gotten a call from somebody who said we had canceled the event for October. And I said, well, that was news to me, because we haven't canceled anything.
I told him not to say anything. I'm kidding.
So anyway, I just thought I'd mention that for anybody's interest. It's still on, but we're going to take a look at it probably late spring or early summer to see where we are and where the COVID is and everything else. Make kind of decision at that point in time. I mentioned previously, so I won't be mentioning it on subsequent meetings about the spring event of shredding and recycling. We're looking at maybe the May timeframe. And as I said, I won't mention it again until we have more definitive with regard to that. And finally, I'm still working on the emergency operation plan. The mayor and I had a meeting the other week to answer some questions. Still moving on. It's as I said, it's quite a project, so it will take a little while, but I am making some progress, and hopefully I'll have more details for you all on the next meeting.
Thank you, sir. Great Age Club, Georgiana.
The Great Age Club Zoom meetings continue. One of the seniors' daughters had gotten some information of how to get onto Walgreens' website to schedule vaccination, which she was kind enough to tell us in time for Georgia and me to get vaccinated. That was on a Saturday. By Monday, when we called a special Zoom meeting for the seniors to let them know what the process was, because it's just crazy. They were out of the vaccine already. So whenever I get any information, I pass it along via email to the seniors. I did get a phone number that Walgreens is now having people use who aren't computer literate, so that they can schedule. But they are we got it at our Walgreens, but they don't know when they were going to get their next shipment. So it's kind of hit and miss. Some people have gone to Burlington, to other, not really out of the area to get them. But whenever I hear anything, I pass it along. And if any of you have any information, I can pass it along if you want to share it with me as far as places that that you think might be available. I mean, they're all signed up on
Allvax.
on Allvax and their insurance, things like Advocate or Northwestern or whatever. And I think some are signed up on Jewel. But if there's anything that anybody knows that that's maybe more viable or a possibility, let me know so I can pass it along. It's just going to be a laborious process to get everybody vaccinated. A new paragraph. We have participated in the Mayor's Monarch Pledge for several years, even before we took the gathering place. And we did do the pledge, and we did a proclamation. But now they've decided that they want the communities to do it annually. So that's why the information was in your packet, so that we can make it official. The pledge was in there for you to read, and it's basically that we're aware of the problem of the endangered monarch butterfly and making the community aware of it and trying their best to find ways to encourage the monarch butterfly. So that's the pledge, and I'm assuming that you read it. The other thing that they expect is that you do certain activities. You have to do a minimum of 3 activities every year. And some of these things we do anyway, so it was easy to check them off. One was to launch maintenance of public communication, and we've sent out things in the newsletter. We will have to do again this spring about suggestions for plants, if they're going to add plants to their garden, that ones that the butterflies lay eggs on, or if they're nectar producing, that would be food for them. So we can do that, and we have done that. You had a chance to read the proclamation, which is one of the things. Let's see. Well, we have our demonstration garden, so to speak, with our gathering place, because both the flowers that are in the garden, as well as the prairie area that's been seeded, have all been seeded with plants that are attracted to pollinators, not just the monarch, but other pollinators.
So the activities that they're checked off on the sheet you have, Georgiana is going to supervise or oversee and keep me in line, and then we will vote on the resolution later this evening.
And one of the things is display and educational signage. Well, we have, I don't know if you've all been over to the gathering place, now you'll be tromping through snow, but we do have an educational sign up there that that shows the life cycle of the monarch butterfly, and then it shows samples of the flowers that are either host flowers where they would lay their eggs, or nectar flowers, which would be their food. And I think it's kind of a neat sign, so something that you can look at when the weather gets decent. So some of these things, as I say, we've been doing already, and so it's easy to just, circle them. If there's anything that, when you looked at the list, if there's anything else that you think that we should consider doing, I'd be glad to hear any suggestions. So just let me know, and then we'll do the proclamation later. Is that
It's on the business end.
okay? All right.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Just a question of, I know the pandemic has kind of pushed things around a little bit, but have we given any thought to when, if any, time we would have the grand opening of the gathering place?
When the pandemic is not a grand opening.
No. No.
When we aren't,
Yeah, when we get through the other end of this, we'll.
yeah, we're just waiting so that we can gather and do,
Okay.
things will grow a lot.
Moving along then. George, do you want to give us the update on your gambling research?
Oh, well, I think you put in the packet what we came up with, what we came up with, and the thing I sent to you.
It's in the packet.
Yes, somewhere else.
Well, why don't you just summarize?
Anyway, here it is. Basically, you have to have a liquor license in order to have video begin with. Also, the liquor must be imbibed on site. It can't be sold in cans and then taken off.
So that eliminates the gas station.
Yeah, so that's the bottom line. And in fact, I've gone to some of the other municipalities, and like in Lake Hills, they blocked the video gambling at Speedway gas station for that very reason. They either have to serve alcohol on site or qualify as a truck stop. Well, neither of those things apply. I mean, you certainly wouldn't want to have on-site imbibement of alcohol and at a place where driving occurs. So I don't see that. And then there was some indication that Mobile may have wanted to buy next door.
They have purchased that.
They have bought that already, but then we have the situation where they have to have somebody there all the time, and wouldn't have the control over what went inside it, which which was one of the things that concerned us when we put the prohibition in the first place.
Okay, so barring a loud voice from the board wanting to pursue this, we're thinking that we should change our ordinance on gaming, we stay the same.
Yes.
Stay the same.
Okay? All right. Thanks, Georgianne, for doing that homework. Madam Clerk.
Oh, I have nothing to report.
Thank you, and I have nothing at this point. I'd like to make an adjustment to the agenda so that our guests can get in on this discussion, not have to stay through our whole holiday decoration ordinance. So I'd like to move to item 2 under business, the discussion whether or not to pursue building additional well. This is Rick Lieber from Robinson.
Hello,
Rick has been
everybody.
that's Javier, both from Robinson. Rick, I found out, has been with Hainesville since the first well. All right, so before Rick is here for you to ask questions and have some input, but I need to share something new with you that came up since the last meeting. At the last meeting, when we had the presentation by Steve Singer and Javier, excuse me, I called him Javier twice. My neighbor is Javier. Hiram. I apologize, Hiram. We went through how we got to the idea of having 2 more holes, wells dug on each of our existing well sites. I got to thinking, and I got to talking to some individual, or an individual who was pretty sharp on mechanics, and the thought that he gave me, he led me back to Hyro and Steve Zahner, and eventually Rick, and to put the wells, the 2 new holes, and then pipe them through the existing machinery, the chlorination and the booster pumps, doesn't give me, in my mind, the security that I'm really looking for, that I think we need. And here's why. Let's say we build an additional hole, new well, and pump it through the existing one on well 3. If that chlorinator or the pump over there goes down, we lose both wells. Meaning what's left over here on one would have to pump what we 12, 18 hours a day to make up, and that would not be recommended. So with that in mind, you got thinking, got talking, and this is not something that has to be decided on tonight. Originally at the board meeting, I was looking to get support for spending $60,000 in engineering fees to move forward in the one well on each site. That's off the table for now. My new thought was, what if we built a standalone well on one of the existing sites? Asked Robinson to price this out, and it came back at roughly $1,050,000, I think, $1,050,000. My thought was it gives us 3 independent wells. If one well goes down, we still have 2. And it gives us more backup, more security. In my conversations with Hyro and with Steve Zahner, they said logically that makes most sense. I mentioned it to Rick earlier this week, and we haven't had much discussion since then. What I'm looking for, and I don't need a decision tonight, what I'm looking for is something, I shouldn't say looking for, what I'm most interested in is security of our water system. That if something goes down, we have enough operating wells to supply the village without straining the remaining wells or whatever's left. And another shift, and this is a monetary one. The first thought I had about putting one on both ends, I was looking to take money from our various reserve accounts each of the next 3 years, 60,000 this year, I think it was 400 the next, and 400 enough next. For a project this big, if it's $1 million and some dollars, I would recommend that we consider taking a loan, taking a long-term loan. Because I talked to Kelly about this. If we took, and I talked to the banker, if we took a 5-year loan, we'd have a big chunk of money coming out of our budget every year. If we took a longer-term loan, what we could do, like we did with the Public Works building, is make the normal payments, and then at the end of the year, we have money left over, unspent, like we typically have done since for the last number of years, we could pay ahead. So eventually, like we did with the Public Works building, pay it off before it's due. Those are my thoughts. Rick, do you want to jump in at this point, or do you want to wait until we get more reaction from the board?
It's either way, it doesn't matter. I mean, I
Jump in when you have something to say.
Okay.
John?
Okay.
Loud enough for everybody to hear.
So in your disaster scenario, one well goes down, it causes another one to overload. What are the chances of the remaining well overloading before we can get the other one back up and running? Because my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, these wells have water for years. So we can get the other well up and running fairly quickly, or it's going to take 2 months, 3 months, where that would actually put a major damage on that well? Or is it like, yeah, we can get it back up within the next 2 days? It's really not going to kill that well to work that hard for 2 days.
Let me give you one example, then Rick, feel free to drop in. We had a well pump go down 2 years ago, Mike? And how long were we down? Do you recall?
It was about a week.
Okay. Rick?
that's a tough question to answer, but it can range from a week to, if it's a major failure of the well pump, of the motor, or even the formation that the well is in, it could be something that is down. I mean, some communities that we're working with right now have had a well out of service for a month and a half, 2 months. And so that's difficult to say. But if you're in the middle of July, okay, and you have I'll say a catastrophic failure of that, where it's down, now you definitely are putting a large strain on that one well. Putting that large strain on that well, where it's running now 18, 20 hours a day, increases the chances that you could have a problem with that well also. The other thing that we get into, and we haven't really done this on a regular basis, just because we haven't had that redundancy, is we should be looking at, on a regular basis, and that regular basis could be once every 7 years, once every 10 years or whatever, but actually pulling a well out, a well pump I'll say, but pulling the well pump and motor out, and just doing routine maintenance on that well. That automatically puts you down to one well. Okay, so there's a lot of things that have come into that, but yeah, those are scenarios where it could be a week, and then again it could be 2 months. So I don't know if that.
But it would put significant enough strain where it warrants.
Mm-hmm.
Where it could possibly make that one go down, then we'd be really up.
Then you'd really be, yeah.
Okay, Georgiana and then George.
The original pre-proposals that Steve offered, one of them was to deal with the Boyson well, which is already a well, and turn that into a usable well for us. Now, the price of that was prohibitive at the time, but if you're talking about $1.2 million, that's about what it would be to deal with the well we already have. I don't know why we would need to start from, start from square one, because just like with oil, you don't know that you're going to be, know, that you're gonna dig somewhere and hit the spot. Just like if you're drilling for oil, you don't always hit oil on the first shot. So I just don't understand why we wouldn't consider going back to using the Boyson well and doing whatever we need to do to make it functional
Okay,
for us.
I'll address that.
Okay.
In this idea of having a third independent well, I'm not taking, in my mind, the Boyson site out. But if we can find one that would be less expensive, one of the biggest expenses with this one is 350 feet of pipe that has to be run to connect us to the village water system. It's not just like we open a well house there, but we have to.
Well, I thought the price included all that when it was 1.2, didn't it include all of that stuff?
As an estimate, yes. So I'm not saying that's out of the picture, that this site is out of the picture. But it's just, we need to, I'm recommending that we look at a standalone. Whatever is most economic, whatever location is most economic and most sensible. And as far as, I want Rick to address it, I'm speculating that drilling for water now is more scientific than it would be drilling for oil, and we have a much better chance of hitting.
Well, the best aquifer that we have, an aquifer that is producing right now, is called the limestone aquifer. Okay, the limestone aquifer is typically is not high in iron, which is a big problem. The problem, or one of the problems, or one of the issues that we face with with the Boyson well, is that it's high in iron. So when we address that, we need to look at iron removal for that. Okay, so iron removal not only is a cost, and I apologize that I don't have all of the details on that, but that's not only is that equipment that you have to put in, but then that's an ongoing maintenance issue as well. Okay, so while I don't think we should take that off the table, I think that's one of the options that we can look at more closely and actually see how that plays out.
And all the figures that I provided you, that Robinson provided me, have been estimates.
Right.
Okay. Until we start digging deeply into the planning,
Yeah.
we won't have a solid figure.
But to finish, I guess what you were saying is this area, at least in Hainesville, this area is got a good limestone fracture, it's called, okay? And a limestone formation, you're dependent on all the cracks and fissures that are in the limestone formation, okay? The larger the cracks, the more the well produces. Like well number 3 produces 600 gallons a minute, well number 1 produces 330 gallons a minute. Still, for a limestone formation, those are really good numbers, okay? Other places that we deal with, you can drill into the limestone, and you'd be lucky if you get 50 gallons a minute, okay? So Hainesville is blessed with a good limestone formation. Does that automatically guarantee that if you drill down that you're going to get that? No, it doesn't. But the chances are much better than other parts of, I'll say, of the county or in the surrounding area. Okay.
To address the other issue of the finances, usually, in my opinion, you would take out a loan if
Use your microphone, please.
you would take out a loan if the interest that you're getting on the money that you have is better than what the loan is. But because the interest on CDs is practically non-existent, I mean, it's like 0.0001, and heaven knows the loan was going to be 2, 3, 4%, whatever. It doesn't make sense to me to take out a loan at a higher percentage when we have the money that's not generating much interest and using that instead. But that's
My thought at this point, Georgiana, and it's not the final thought, is that I'm not real comfortable spending down a great deal of our reserve, because we we have other things that could happen.
Okay.
So that's just thought.
And
Nor am I.
one other thing, we're talking about the importance of redundancy, and obviously I can see the value in that. But my question is, we still have vacant property that's commercial property in Hainesville, and what will any of this do for long-term
Development?
Yes, development. I mean, because we have to have water available for the new developers. So I'm just wondering, is this all we need, and will that suffice, or do we need to think longer term and think about a different approach or an additional approach to make sure that we have
Enough water.
for the future?
Quickly, we have about 2 strips of commercial development areas, and that's right at 134. If we go west, the railroad, our water stops at the railroad tracks. And the way our ordinances are written, if someone wants to build over there, they have to pay for the installation of water. Now, we're allowing this truck facility, we gave them permission to have a well, because the prohibited, it costs $100,000 just to get under the tracks. Maybe somewhere in the future, if we really get wealthy, we can put water out that way to stimulate growth. But right now, water is not going to be an issue west of the tracks.
I was just thinking, I know on the, I don't know whether it's east, when on 134, I never know which direction is which. But anyway, let's say the east side where Firestone is, I know we have those 2 parcels on either side of Cranberry Lake Drive. But we also have parcels on the
Other side
other side of 134.
Yeah.
And then we have along where the Starbucks is, the house, Johnston's house, and all of that along there is going to be commercial. If we ever get rid of what's his name's terrible little house.
Well, they just fixed those. Okay, Rick, I don't know if you have any response to that.
Well, and no, I think that that's definitely something that you have to look at, is what you need to project what your growth is going to be in the future. But I guess what we're talking about here is doing another well for redundancy at this point. If it appears that you're developing or that you're developing more, and depending on the type of development that it is, to have this additional well that we're talking about, or wells, and then to be able to add to that in the future, yeah, it's even better. So you're not going to, for future development, you're certainly not going to lose by doing what you're doing right now.
But do we need to think more than just this as we're planning? Or can we just deal with this and worry about the future?
Well, if you have, and I don't know this, but if you have a commercial or a development plan, okay, at this point where we could go in and look at that plan and say, okay, based on this, based on the plan that you have, this is how much water is going to be needed, okay? So if that exists, and I don't know that, but if that exists, then we can put together numbers that would say, okay, and then what's that time frame? Is that time frame 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? What is that time frame for that build out? And then you can do that. And for water planning, I mean, we do that on a regular basis for communities, where we say, okay, a community wants to, it has an economic growth plan and economic development plan, and then you say, okay, how soon is this going to happen? Is this something that's going to happen, X amount of growth in this in 5 years, okay? And then based on that, you can then say, okay, we're going to need another well of at least 300 gallons a minute, okay? Or we're going to need, or if it's all going to develop all of it for the plan, usually they're 20-year plans, but But if it's gonna develop that much sooner, then you have to look at it and say, okay, well, then, you know, maybe one 300-gallon well isn't enough, then we need two.
We could also look at the possibility of making it part of the development and the
Sure.
developer's responsibility.
And the developer pays for it,
Pay
yeah.
for it.
But at least that way you know, and you can also do it in what your connection fees are, okay, your impact fees, where you say, okay, we know that if this area builds out, we're gonna need X amount of water capacity, okay, which is gonna require another well, it's gonna require treatment, it's gonna require whatever, or maybe, who knows, maybe another water tower or another ground storage tank, you know, something like that.
Let's get George's question in here.
Okay, I got a couple of questions. One, just to follow on with what Dan said, just so I understand, what we're proposing right now, regardless of what direction we move, is for redundancy, not expanded capacity. Is that correct?
I think the two, you're talking about redundancy right now, but let's look at it in the big picture, okay? We say we're going to do a well, all right? When we design that well, we can say at that point, we can say, all right, if we drill a 12-inch well or we drill an 18-inch well, that's going to give us approximately, or we anticipate that's going to give us this much water. If we're anticipating that there's going to be more growth, we look at it and say, okay, well, maybe we do a 20-inch well.
What size well are you considering for this suggestion?
I won't speak to that just because I haven't been a part of that so far.
We're not there yet.
Yeah,
I
we're not
seem to
really there.
recall,
Yeah.
and Harold, I don't know if you remember, I think the Boysen well is 8 or 10 inches.
I think it's something like that, yeah.
What are our other wells?
The other wells are approximately that. I think the well number 3, I think, is maybe a 14 or a 16-inch well.
And is that why, because of the size of it, why we're getting the extra?
Well, you get more water out of it, correct.
Okay.
Because we do have a development that's coming in very soon.
We do.
Well, isn't Firestone taking over that whole section on Cranberry Lake?
Yeah, but
Drive
they'll
in.
tap into, but they're leaving this, and that's, yeah, somebody could move in there, but their water usage is not real large.
Okay.
All right,
Yeah.
George.
Get to my original questions. Number one, so I understand it correctly, the original suggestion of one of the options where we drill another hole, essentially, on an existing well. So it's like you have 2 stories instead of 1. But would they both use the same equipment, or would we have to add additional equipment to it?
Well, with those particular, with the I'll say the option of putting a well at each of the existing well sites right now. Number one, we don't know without further, I'll say further research, how much property that we have or where we can locate those wells. That would be the number one issue that we would have to look at. Because let's say you put and to answer I'll answer your question first, Bruce. If we put one at each one of those wells, yes, we would utilize the existing, I'll say the existing infrastructure in each one of those well houses.
All right.
With the exception of a new pump for the new hole.
Okay.
Oh yeah, well, it would be 2 completely new wells, drilled wells, okay, with a motor, a submersible motor and pump that would drop into those wells. So you would have that. You would have controls, okay, at each one. We would have to look at the existing facilities to see. Now I think 3 could accommodate that. I'm not quite sure about 1 over there. that they could actually accommodate the control panels. Because the control panels, starters, breakers, all of that type of thing.
So if that's the case,
Mhm.
then if the new option of having a separate well altogether,
Mhm.
aside from a physical structure to put it in, what else would you be adding that you wouldn't do for having a separate well drilled in the same well house?
Chlorinator, water
Chlorinator,
treatment,
yeah, for fluoride and I believe for
booster pumps,
polyphosphate.
power, backup.
Mhm. Yeah, standby generator.
All right, so those things, you would, using the separate, this additional well in the existing well house, there would be some items that would be used from the existing well as it is, rather than adding another thing to it.
Yeah, that's correct, but one of the things, and we talked about that internally, I guess, is one of the things that we do have to look at is you now have two well houses that are aging, okay? Most of the equipment in there is not designed for like the life of a well pump. A well pump and motor is typically 20 years, okay? We're already to that point in well one, for sure. And so it's like, and the same thing with the chlorination systems and everything like that is we really need to go back in and take a look at that and say, so while you can do that, and I think the mayor pointed out that because they're aging, okay, if one chlorinator, if you're using one chlorinator for two wells, and that chlorinator goes out, now you've lost both
I mean,
wells.
so what you're really saying by all this is that what really makes sense, if we want true redundancy, is to have a separate well altogether.
Yes.
Now, the question is, in the option where you had an additional well in the existing well house for one or both well houses, would that give you more capability, forgetting about redundancy for the moment, would that give you more capability than just a one new separate well house?
More capability for what?
One
More capacity as far as,
More pumping capacity?
yeah.
Well, look, I need to have an additional well at both sites. That's what you're talking about. Okay, so they have an additional well at both sites, as long as, I'll say, as long as there wasn't issues with that ancillary equipment. As long as there wasn't any issues with that, that would give you, it would give you more options, or it would give you more, I'll say,
All right,
yeah.
so, and maybe you're not in a position to make a firm recommendation, but given what we've already said, and the fact that maybe you have, if you had two separate well houses with additional well in each one, so you have maybe a little more capacity versus having one brand new well someplace for redundancy purposes, what would you suggest would be the better alternative?
Before he answers, the capacity of a new well would depend on not only what we drill into, but the size of the pipe.
So what you're saying is, really, we have, with the new option that you're suggesting, is that we would not only have redundancy, because everything would be completely separate, and newer, given the size of the well itself, we could address the capacity issue as well.
And, go ahead.
Wally,
Okay, Rick, one question, okay?
louder noise.
Yeah, I have one more question, but go ahead.
Okay, so now, let's talk about the age of our wells, our pumps, okay? So we'll need to basically rebuild one. The one is the oldest.
The oldest
The
one.
oldest well pump right
Yes.
now. Okay, so you have to take that well house down. Okay, so you put the string on 3. Whatever modifications you do, whether you drill another well pump in each, any one of those, you have to take that well house down.
Right.
For that length of time, hook it all up, get everything meshed together, everything else. So now you put the spring on your equipment. So I look at it from that point, I say, guess what? If we put a brand new one in, we go with the backup generator, okay, we would be handle gas, not diesel, something like that. Put up the VFDs, we don't need big magnetics, okay? It would be state of the art. And we can always adapt to it or add to it.
Right.
Well,
Well, I would agree that probably given what we've already said, it probably makes a lot more sense to go with a separate brand new well house. Now, given that, where would you put the damn thing?
All right, I can address that. Conversation I had with Rick late last week, early this week, was that one of the first things we have to do is review possible sites. We're not there yet,
Okay.
so we can't answer that question. What up, Georgianne?
Just, if we're talking about getting a bigger diameter pipe for this new well, because that would increase our capacity, it would solve 2 problems, right? It would increase capacity and redundancy. How much more expensive is it to get bigger pipe? I mean, is that a
Okay.
significant problem?
I'm going to jump in on this because Rick doesn't have those figures yet. We haven't done anything other than conceptually kick this around. And with bringing this new idea to you tonight, I'm certainly not looking to have all things answered.
Right.
And Rick pulled numbers out of his head.
No, just theoretically, I just wondered, is it a lot more expensive to increase the pipe size?
It's not, I'll say, to double the size of the well, the diameter of the well is not necessarily going to double the size of the cost.
Okay.
Okay.
And again, without,
Yeah, no,
that's the best answer I
Yeah,
can
I
give you.
just wanted to get it.
Unless I hear to the contrary, I want to pursue the development of an independent well.
Yes.
Thank you. We'll do that. There'll be more conversations. No decisions have been made yet other than that one. Okay? Rick, Iro, thank you.
Any other questions? No?
Thank you very much.
Okay, sure.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Gentlemen. Iro, if you want to stay for, as you indicated earlier, feel free. All right. Thank you for that input. Now, back to item number 1, discussion of holiday decorations ordinance. So you don't have to flip through your packet. I have the ordinance. All right, here's the ordinance that basically says within 30 days past the holiday, or holiday decorations have to go down, whether it's Halloween, Christmas, or whatever. Our practice has been January 31st. I sent you all the email about, so you've seen those numbers. 4 out of 6 of you said ticket. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
I agree.
Thank you.
Then the weather went south, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't make myself go out. I made a phone call to Chief Perlini, and I said, Phil, here's the conundrum I'm faced with. 4 out of 6 boards says ticket, because these people have been warned and whatnot. So, Jerry, if you do that, someone's going to go out there, climb up, fall down, and get hurt or killed. And although it would not be your fault, it would be your fault. And the village would be blamed. So for the 24 people that still have lights up, the letter that I sent them indicated when it's reasonable and safe, take them down. I pulled, knowing that I wanted to talk about this, did I hand these out
Yes,
already?
yes.
Okay. I didn't talk to the villages on here. I went to their ordinances and went looking for holiday decorations. This is what I found. The question for the board is whether or not we want to continue with this and leave the mayor some discretion, whether it's me or whoever follows me, or do we leave it as is, or do we change it, or get rid of it? Just looking for your opinion. Jack?
I'm not a huge fan of seeing the Christmas lights up in July, right? I'm not advocating somebody gets out in January and removes them either. But I think by the end of March, they should be gone.
Okay. John, did I say again?
I say we leave it as is, but leave it at the mayor's discretion to extend if needed, depending on weather, but put a date on it, like no later than.
No, we have a no later than date right now.
Huh?
We have a no later than date.
We have a later than date right now, but you're at your discretion as well.
Yes.
So, but we can also build in a mayor's discretion. You know, am I making myself clear? Like put an absolute, like, they
If there's
should
an
be removed
understanding
within
to
30
come up.
days of the holiday. For, I mean, to be realistic, we're talking about Christmas decorations. I don't see people leaving up Halloween decorations all year long or anything like that. So, and then at the mayor's discretion to extend.
Okay. Georgianne?
If we were in Florida, 30 days is fine, but we're here. So I'd say if you want to keep some kind of ordinance, it's got to be like till the end of March or something, because it's always going to be weather like this. I mean, the exception would be able to get out and do your things in January.
All right, just to throw a response, there were 109 of those door hangers hung. 70 managed to get out and remove their lights. Now, it was after the January 31st date.
I got a door hanger. It was hung on my door before the 31st.
It was 3 days before, right, Mike?
Yeah, it was hung there, but it was a warning.
Right.
Okay, so, all right, so we could change, one of the options could be to change the deadline. All right, anything else, Georgianne? Anyone
No,
else?
I think, I think people are going to take their Santa Clauses in and that kind of stuff, and, you're going to look at the lights in the tree, who cares? I'd say forget it.
This is the first time in my 4 years as mayor where we've had this many. Mary, anything?
January actually wasn't as cold as February was.
Sorry. Yeah.
So, I mean, I was outside taking down our stuff. I didn't have much out, but I took it down by the end of before January. And it's just I knew I had to get it down, so I went out there on when it was a nice day. Like this week, we're going to have temperatures in the 40s. So there shouldn't be anybody that has anything left after this week, I would think. So it's kind of weather.
There's people with lights in them.
Can I say something?
Right after Wally.
Okay.
Okay. Georgianne, you were saying that, you should, how would you say, give them a little bit more of a grace period. I work, okay? I put up my lights. I had them up there. I saw whether it was getting bad. I know it's going to get bad. So what do? I go out there when I can in January to take them down. And I took them down before January 31st. Why can't they do it? Why can't they do it?
I can tell you why.
Okay, but the thing is, somebody else doesn't have 4 hours in a day?
No, not everybody does.
Chris?
One to find 4 hours in a day to put them up.
Okay, point made. Chris?
So if you want to extend the date a little later,
That's a possibility.
at least make sure that they don't still have them on after the 30 days, if they're going to still have them up. We left today and I saw 2 houses that still had their lights on.
One of those individuals, I believe, contacted me over the weekend with an email saying, I'm depressed because of the pandemic and I leave the lights on because they cheer me up.
Amen.
Another person contacted me through all this and said, I'm old, I'm 65, I can't get them down. I said, I'm 69, I got mine back.
Well,
You
mine,
got them on,
Yeah,
You
you put 'em
put 'em up.
All right, George?
First of all, is this the entire ordinance?
That's the entire thing that pertains to,
Well, I mean,
yes,
that's it.
that's it.
So it doesn't have any penalty or anything in there?
Oh, all of our ordinances have penalties. We can take it up to $750.
Oh, so it's not in this particular?
No, it's covered elsewhere.
All right, my suggestion is that you leave it just the way it is, but then you add to it, at the mayor's discretion, if there's some extra.
Oh, you're not gonna hang me that way.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's in,
Well, I mean, people.
You
are
wanted to
calling
raise
anyway.
pardon me?
You gotta raise this.
No, George.
People are calling you anyway, are they not? And you're making a decision.
Yes, and I'm viewing this year as kind of unique because of the weather.
Yeah,
I
well,
just-
and that's what I'm saying. Meaning, if you make it hard and fast like this, without changing the date, I mean, you could have something come up if you move the date out there. So the thing is, you make it hard and fast what it is, but you have some wiggle room, but you put it in the ordinance so that there's no question that you have the authority to do that.
I think the only backing I would need, or whoever sits in this chair would need, would be the support of the board on how to proceed. If we put it that it's at the mayor's discretion in the ordinance. And
Well, I mean,
if
you wouldn't just say at the mayor's discretion.
If it becomes my discretion or a future mayor, they may look at it as my wife does. Who cares? It's Christmas lights. And
No, but
then, go ahead.
you just don't say at the mayor's discretion and leave it that way. You say, some kind of, due to weather conditions or some kind of calamity or something. Not just any whim that you have.
And I have a lot of whims.
I mean, but people, are you really that bugged about somebody having their lights up if they're not on? I mean, do you really care?
Here's what I'm stuck with, Georgianne, to address that. I view myself in this role as one who is supposed to ensure enforcement of our various ordinances, from the boat trailers that are supposed to be out, and at a certain time of the year, and the ski or the snowmobile trailers that are supposed to be out, the lawns that are cut. If the mayor doesn't do that, no one else has the authority to. So the ordinance says, and look, I've worked with making rules my entire professional career as an administrator. If I don't enforce the ordinances, why have it?
No, that's what I'm saying, but why do we need that ordinance? Are people really that bummed about somebody having their Christmas tree lights up if they're not on?
I don't like it. I'm perfectly honest. I don't like seeing
I mean,
Christmas
I don't
tree
know.
lights out.
That's your holiday.
I'll ask Kathy and Kelly, who have been here a lot longer than I have there been, as best you know, people upset by lights still being up?
I don't think so.
I thought there was 1 year that they had a few complaints about it, and that's what actually brought it up in the first place, January 31st.
Okay,
The last time I was,
here's what I'm drawing from this conversation, and correct me if I'm wrong. We leave the ordinance, and I pray a lot that it doesn't snow and get real cold in January.
they're still gonna be up there if there's no snow on the ground either, I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Well,
They're just
if
not
there's
gonna
no
do
snow
it.
on the ground,
It's cold.
if there's no snow and it's really not really cold, I'll take it. It was when dropping into the sub-zero wind chill weather and the 3
It
feet of
also gets
snow.
darker a lot earlier.
Pardon?
It also gets darker a lot earlier.
I get up
And
at 3
I-
o'clock every morning.
Well, the other thing is you can.
I'm not doing this. I want to get home. Let's.
From a safety standpoint, just like the advertising
Tired of
this
this weather now.
leaf filter gutter thing, that once it's up, you don't have to deal with it anymore. Maybe as long as the lights are off, once they put them up there, they don't have to worry about climbing a ladder to take them down.
All right, I'll go with judgment on this, and all these people have gotten letters indicating when it's safe and reasonable, and I'll stay on top of it. And maybe I'll do a little bit more earlier advertising next year. Thanks for your input. Okay, item number 3. Approval of resolution for construction of state highway for the village of Hainesville. This is an annual requirement from IDOT. Need a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Georgiana. Roll call, please.
Discussion.
Pardon?
Discussion.
Any discussion? Thank you.
Trustees George Duberstein.
Aye.
Kreis.
Aye.
Koval. Darrenowski.
Aye.
Georgianne Duberstein.
Aye.
Schnelleth.
Aye.
Motion carried. R21-2-149.
Need a motion for the approval of the Dave Schultz rental agreement. So moved.
Second.
Say Wally, John, discussion? Roll call.
Trustees George Duberstein.
Aye.
Kreis.
Aye.
Koval. Darrenowski.
Aye.
Georgianne Duberstein. Schnelleth.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Need a motion to approve a 4-year water treatment plant and wastewater sanitary lift station operational assistance agreement from 5/1/21 to 4/30/25, which takes me to the end of my term. Robinson agreement for year 1 rates are $3,445, year 2, $3,618, year 3, $3,799, year 4, $3,932. These rates were negotiated back and forth between Mr. Paul Rusco, Robinson, and myself over the course of a few months.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? That was George and John. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Trustees George Duberstein.
Aye.
Kreis.
Aye.
Koval. Darrenowski.
Aye.
Georgianne Duberstein.
Aye.
Schnelleth.
Aye.
Motion carried.
I need a motion to approve the water billing assistance. This is our outsourcing the water billing Robinson agreement for extension of 1 year from January 1st, 21. We're a little bit behind to 4/30/21.
So moved.
Second.
George and John, discussion? Roll call.
Trustees George Duberstein.
Aye.
Kreis.
Aye.
Koval. Darrenowski.
Aye.
Georgianne Duberstein. Schnelleth.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Need a motion to approve the resolution for the expenditure of MFT funds for road work for $150,000 for May 1st, 21 to 4/30/22. It's a requirement that allows us to use MFT funds to accomplish our annual program. The dollar amount in this motion is a maximum. It isn't necessarily the amount we're going to spend.
So moved.
Second.
We've got George, Jan, and George for the discussion. Roll call.
Trustees George Duberstein.
Aye.
Kreis.
Aye.
Koval. Darrenowski.
Aye.
Georgianne Duberstein. And Schnelleth.
Aye.
Motion carried. R21-2-150.
Need a motion to approve the resolution for the expenditure of MFT funds for road work for $121,526.85 from May 1st, 21 to 4/30/22. It's another piece of paperwork. It's kind of covers the same work, but it's a requirement that we do this 2 separate accounts. I wrote it correct?
Yep, 2 separate ones for rebuilding Illinois funds and for MFT.
All right. Need a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We got George and John. Discussion?
Yes.
Chad?
Can you explain, that you guys started to explain that it's, a formality, we have to do this? Why do we have 2 different line items?
Ira, if you could kind of step up, why do we have 2 sets of paperwork for this?
Because they're 2 different funding, types of funding. So one is the MFT, which is the motor fuel tax that we use every year. We have been using that. The other one is a new funding that we receive. It's a rebuild Illinois funds, basically money that was given to the municipalities to put towards infrastructure. We're going to be using it in a road resurfacing program. We're going to be maximizing those funds. We have received 2 installments. I believe we received the 3rd one, Kelly.
I think just 2 so far.
Okay, the third one should be coming in, it has been issued, should be coming in soon. It's just a formality, it just needs to be done separately because there's two different types of funds.
Okay, it's the source.
Kelly?
I just want to add to it, it's the grant funds that we've received, it's over a 3-year period. So in 3 fiscal years, we get 2 funding portions each year. So we didn't use any of the funds with the last road program, we were saving them for this year to do more.
Thank you.
Okay, one addition to that is this is part of Governor Pritzker's Build Illinois and the gas tax that got raised.
Yep.
We got extra money out of that. Okay, so
This
we
is
have a
like the-
motion in section.
Is that like the capital improvement, the state capital improvement projects? Is that, if they give it to the
No,
municipal,
no.
this is
no.
something else?
It's just the 18-cent a gallon fuel tax that Governor Pritzker,
Oh, yeah.
okay, we got a share of that. In the second motion here, the second piece of paperwork that we're doing is accounting for money out of that grant.
Oh, okay.
All right, further questions? Roll call, please.
Trustees George Duberstein.
Aye.
Priest.
Aye.
Koval. Kieranowski.
Aye.
Georgiana Duberstein.
Aye.
And Chanel.
Aye.
Motion carried. R 21-2-151.
I'm skipping to 10, so we can just save the discussion for the end. Need a motion to approve audit fees for GASB, which is the government accounting something or the other, 83 fees. BKD is our auditor for year 2021 at $24,200. For the following year,